She stood at the Simón Bolívar Bridge connecting Venezuela to Colombia, watching the daily flow of people crossing in both directions. Patricia Poleo had covered migration crises across Latin America for 3 decades, but what she witnessed here challenged every framework she had learned about population displacement. The world knew this story by a single damning statistic: 7 million Venezuelan migrants, the largest displacement in the Western Hemisphere's modern history. But the numbers told only half the story. More precisely, they told the wrong story entirely. The journalist watched families cross into Colombia in the morning carrying empty suitcases and return in the evening with goods that cost half the price on the Colombian side. She observed Venezuelan professionals working remotely for international companies from internet cafes in Cucuta while maintaining their homes in Caracas. She met seasonal workers who had been crossing this border for decades, long before any crisis. What the world called an exodus was something far more complex, a massive circular migration system that defied every textbook definition of refugee displacement. The 7 million number wasn't wrong, but its meaning was. The illusion of permanence. When international organizations count Venezuelan migrants, they apply a binary framework. You are either inside Venezuela or outside Venezuela. You are either a resident or a refugee. But this industrial age framework cannot capture the fluid reality of 21st century population movement. Contrary to popular belief, the majority of Venezuelan migrants never intended to leave permanently. They intended to survive. The distinction is crucial because it reveals the fundamental misunderstanding that has shaped international policy and humanitarian response. The Venezuelan migration pattern resembles less the Syrian refugee crisis and more the Mexican Bracero program of the 1940s, temporary, circular, economically motivated, movement that serves both origin and destination communities. But the world's migration machinery can only process permanent displacement, missing the nuanced reality of adaptive mobility. This misreading has profound consequences. Humanitarian aid designed for permanent refugees creates dependency where none existed. Integration programs targeting people who never planned to integrate waste resources. Repatriation efforts aimed at people who never truly left miss the point entirely. The economics of mobility. To understand Venezuelan migration, one must understand Venezuelan mathematics. In 2019, a Venezuelan teacher's monthly salary could buy 2 kilograms of meat. The same teacher crossing to Colombia for weekend work could earn enough to feed her family for a month. The choice was not between staying and leaving. The choice was between survival and starvation. But the economics worked both ways. Venezuelan professionals living in Colombian cities discovered they could maintain their careers while keeping their real estate, their family networks, and their cultural identity across the border. A software engineer could earn Colombian pesos while paying Venezuelan rents. An accountant could serve international clients from Bogotá while visiting family in Maracaibo monthly. This created what migration economists call split location strategies, households that maximize resources by operating across multiple locations simultaneously. One partner works abroad, while the other maintains the home base. Children study in Colombia, while grandparents receive remittances in Venezuela. Assets are diversified across currencies and countries. The 7 million figure counts each of these strategic decisions as a permanent departure. But for the families involved, it represents sophisticated adaptation to economic volatility, not abandonment of homeland. The mythology of return. International policy operates on the assumption that migrants want to return home when conditions improve. This assumption drives billions of dollars in repatriation programs and reconstruction aid, but it misunderstands the fundamental nature of contemporary Venezuelan migration. Many Venezuelan migrants don't need to return because they never fully left. They maintain homes, businesses, and family obligations in Venezuela while working abroad. Return for them is not a future possibility, but a current reality. They return regularly, seasonally, strategically. Others have indeed established permanent residence abroad, but their relationship with Venezuela transcends simple presence or absence. They send remittances that keep Venezuelan communities functioning. They maintain cultural networks that preserve Venezuelan identity in diaspora. They create business connections that benefit both countries. The binary thinking of return versus remain cannot capture this complex web of transnational belonging. Venezuelan migrants have created something unprecedented, a distributed nation that exists across multiple territories simultaneously. The politics of numbers. The 7 million figure serves political purposes that have little to do with migration reality. For Venezuelan opposition, it represents the scale of government failure. For neighboring governments, it justifies international aid and regional support. For international organizations, it demonstrates the urgency of humanitarian intervention. But the number itself obscures more than it reveals. It counts a businessman who commutes weekly between Caracas and Miami, the same as a family living in a Colombian refugee camp. It treats a temporary worker saving money to return home identically to a political exile with no intention of return. This statistical flattening prevents effective policy response. Resources flow to crisis management rather than mobility facilitation. Integration programs target people who don't need integration. Emergency aid addresses acute needs while ignoring chronic adaptations that actually work. Most importantly, the exodus narrative strips agency from Venezuelan migrants. This means it portrays them as passive victims of circumstance rather than active agents of survival. It ignores their remarkable adaptability, their entrepreneurial creativity, their maintenance of transnational networks that benefit multiple countries. The innovation of informality. Venezuelan migrants have created informal systems that often work better than formal ones. WhatsApp networks coordinate jobs across borders. Cryptocurrency transfers move money more efficiently than banks. Social networks provide credit, housing, and business opportunities without government involvement. These informal systems challenge state-centric approaches to migration management. They suggest that the most effective responses come from migrants themselves, not from humanitarian organizations or government programs. In Colombian cities, Venezuelan entrepreneurs have created entire business ecosystems. They've introduced new products, services, and business models that benefit local economies. Their informal networks have connected Colombian businesses to Venezuelan suppliers, creating trade relationships that bypass official channels but benefit both sides. This innovation extends to identity itself. Venezuelan migrants maintain multiple affiliations simultaneously: Venezuelan culturally, Colombian economically, cosmopolitan aspirationally. They refuse the either-or choices that official categories impose. The future of movement. The Venezuelan case previews the future of global migration. Circular, strategic, technology-enabled movement that transcends traditional categories of permanent relocation. Climate change, economic volatility, and technological connectivity will create more, not fewer, populations that move fluidly across borders. The challenge for policymakers is developing frameworks sophisticated enough to support this complexity rather than forcing it into obsolete categories. This means facilitating temporary legal status, enabling remittance flows, recognizing circular migration patterns, and accepting that 21st century belonging is less about location than about networks. It also means acknowledging that migration can be solution, not just problem. Venezuelan migrants have brought skills, innovation, and networks that benefit destination countries. They've maintained economic connections that help Venezuela survive its crisis. They've created models of adaptive resilience that other populations will need as global instability increases. The 7 million Venezuelan migrants represent not failure, but adaptation, not breakdown, but breakthrough, not exodus, but evolution. The question is whether the international community can evolve its thinking fast enough to support rather than hinder this transformation. Sanalinaxine, Venezuelan migration reveals the inadequacy of our mental models, not the inadequacy of migrants themselves. The future belongs to those who can move fluidly between identities, locations, and opportunities. Venezuelans are already living in that future. The rest of the world is still learning to count it.